Adopted girl finds treasure map in attic. The search uncovers a secret connecting two families in unimaginable ways. Hello, welcome. Leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. Imagine discovering that everything you thought you knew about your life was a lie. A young girl, adopted by a wealthy family, stumbles upon an old, dust-covered map hidden away in a forgotten corner of the attic. But this isn't just any map. It's the key to a past no one wanted her to uncover. What she finds on this unexpected journey will forever change not only her life but also the lives of those she holds closest. As she follows the clues, she begins to unravel secrets that have been buried for decades. Secrets that connect two families in ways she could never have imagined. With every revelation, the stakes get higher, and the lines between right and wrong blur. This isn't just a treasure hunt, it's a search for the truth. But some truths are more dangerous than gold. What happens when the pursuit of answers leads you to a place where you must choose between the family that raised you and the blood that runs through your veins? Prepare to be gripped by a story of love, betrayal, and a shocking discovery that will leave you questioning everything. The sound of shattering glass pierced the air, followed by muffled shouting from downstairs. 10-year-old Emily flinched, her small hands trembling as she clutched an old photograph. Tears welled up in her dark brown eyes as she stared at the image of a woman she'd never met but felt inexplicably drawn to. Emily wasn't supposed to be in the attic. The Campbells, her adoptive parents, had expressly forbidden it. But on nights like this, when the arguments downstairs became too much to bear, the dusty space became her refuge. The attic of the sprawling Victorian mansion in suburban Boston was a treasure trove of forgotten memories. Antique furniture draped in white sheets loomed like ghosts in the dim light. Cobwebs adorned every corner, and the musty smell of age permeated the air. Emily's gaze drifted to the ornate full-length mirror propped against the wall. Her reflection stared back at her. A young black girl with tight curls and warm brown skin, looking small and out of place in her pink designer pajamas. She didn't belong here, not really. Not in this house, not in this family. The shouting intensified downstairs. Emily could make out snippets of the argument. "Can't keep living like this, Richard. What do you want me to do, Karen? She's our daughter now. Is she? Sometimes I wonder." Emily's chest tightened. She knew they were arguing about her again. It had been happening more frequently lately. The perfect facade of the Campbell family was cracking, and Emily felt like she was at the center of it all. She turned away from the mirror, her eyes falling on an old trunk tucked away in the corner. It was made of worn leather and brass, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. Emily had never noticed it before. Curiosity overcame her fear of being discovered. She crept towards the trunk, her bare feet silent on the wooden floorboards. The lid creaked as she opened it, revealing a jumble of old papers, trinkets, and yellowed photographs. Something caught her eye, a folded piece of parchment that looked different from the rest. Emily's heart raced as she carefully unfolded it. It was a map, intricate and detailed, with faded ink and cryptic symbols. In the corner, barely legible, was a date, June 15th, 1985, exactly 10 years before Emily was born. As she examined the map, a small envelope fluttered to the floor. Emily picked it up with trembling fingers. Inside was an unfinished letter, the handwriting elegant but hurried. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, it means I failed to protect you. I'm so sorry, my sweet girl. There are truths you need to know, secrets that could change everything. The map will guide you to." The letter ended abruptly, as if the writer had been interrupted. Emily's mind reeled. The letter was addressed to her, but how was that possible? She'd only been adopted by the Campbells 5 years ago. With shaking hands, she turned over the photograph she'd been clutching. There, written in faded ink on the back, was a name: Amelia Johnson. Emily gasped. It was the same name signed at the bottom of the unfinished letter. Suddenly, the attic door creaked open. Emily scrambled to hide the map and letter, shoving them under her pajama top just as Karen Campbell's voice rang out. "Emily? What are you doing up here?" Karen stood in the doorway, her blonde hair perfectly styled even at this late hour, her silk robe cinched tightly around her waist. Her blue eyes narrowed as she surveyed the scene. Emily's heart pounded. "I couldn't sleep. I heard noises." Karen's expression softened slightly, but there was still an edge to her voice. "You know you're not supposed to be up here, sweetheart. It's not safe." As Karen ushered her out of the attic, Emily clutched the hidden treasures close to her chest. Her mind raced with questions. Who was Amelia Johnson? Why did she write a letter to Emily before she was even born? And what secrets could be so important that they needed to be hidden away in a dusty old trunk? Back in her room, Emily lay awake long into the night. The map and letter were safely tucked away in her secret hiding spot behind a loose floorboard. As she drifted off to sleep, Emily made a silent promise to herself. She would uncover the truth, no matter what it cost her. In the darkness of her room, illuminated only by the soft glow of her nightlight, Emily didn't notice the shadow that passed by her window. Nor did she hear the quiet click of a camera shutter from the street below. Someone was watching. Someone who knew that Emily had just taken the first step on a journey that would unravel decades of secrets and lies. A journey that would connect two families in ways no one could have imagined. As dawn broke over the sleepy Boston suburb, Emily tossed fitfully in her sleep, unaware that her life was about to change forever. The map in her possession was more than just a curiosity. It was the key to unlocking a past that some would kill to keep buried. The stage was set. The players were in motion. And at the center of it all was a 10-year-old girl who had no idea of the storm that was about to engulf her life. In the Campbell mansion, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows, an uneasy silence settled over the house. But it was merely the calm before the storm. For Emily, the shadows of the past were about to step into the light, bringing with them revelations that would shake the very foundations of everything she thought she knew. The truth was out there, hidden in the cryptic symbols of an old map and the unfinished words of a letter. And Emily, with the unwavering determination that only a child can possess, was ready to uncover it all. Little did she know, the journey ahead would test not only her courage, but also her capacity for love, forgiveness, and understanding. The secrets of the past were about to collide with the realities of the present, and at the heart of it all was a little girl searching for her place in a world that suddenly seemed much bigger and more complicated than she had ever imagined. As Emily finally drifted into a deep sleep, the map and letter lay hidden beneath her floorboards, pulsing with the weight of untold stories and long-buried truths. The adventure was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same again. The following morning, Emily woke with a start, her heart racing. For a moment, she thought the events of the previous night had been a dream, but as she reached under her floorboard and felt the crinkle of old paper, reality came rushing back. Sunlight streamed through her bedroom window, painting patterns on the pale pink walls. Outside, birds chirped cheerfully, oblivious to the turmoil within the Campbell mansion. Emily could hear movement downstairs, the clinking of china, the low murmur of voices. Life was proceeding as normal, but for Emily, nothing would ever be normal again. With trembling hands, she retrieved the map and letter, spreading them out on her bed. In the light of day, the map looked even more intricate. Strange symbols and cryptic notations covered its surface, leading to a location marked with a bold X. Emily's eyes narrowed as she recognized the street names. The destination wasn't far, maybe a 30-minute bike ride from their suburban Boston home. A soft knock on her door made Emily jump. She quickly shoved the items under her pillow. "Emily? Are you awake, sweetie?" Karen's voice called out, sounding strained despite its forced cheerfulness. "Yes, Mom," Emily replied, wincing at how foreign the word mom still felt on her tongue. Even after 5 years, Karen entered, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Time for breakfast. We have a big day ahead, remember. We're visiting the Johnsons this afternoon." Emily's breath caught in her throat. The Johnsons? Could it be a coincidence? She nodded mutely, mind racing. As Karen left, Emily's gaze fell on the family portrait hanging on her wall. Richard and Karen Campbell smiled broadly, their golden hair and blue eyes shining. Between them stood Emily, her dark skin and curly hair a stark contrast. She remembered the day that photo was taken, how the photographer had fussed and fretted, trying to find the right lighting to make it work. Downstairs, breakfast was a tense affair. Richard Campbell sat behind his Wall Street Journal, barely acknowledging his wife and daughter. Karen flitted about, her movements jerky and nervous as she poured coffee and arranged toast on china plates. "Emily," Richard finally spoke, lowering his paper, "your mother and I have been talking. We think it might be good for you to spend some time with your cousins this summer. At their lake house in New Hampshire." Emily's fork clattered against her plate. "But why? I thought we were going to Martha's Vineyard, like always." Karen and Richard exchanged a loaded glance. "We just think a change of scenery might be nice for you." "Sweetie," Karen said, her voice overly bright. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. They were trying to get rid of her. The argument from last night, the tension at breakfast. It all made sense now. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "May I be excused?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Back in her room, Emily's sadness gave way to determination. She pulled out the map and letter, studying them with renewed intensity. Whatever secrets lay hidden in that old chest, she would uncover them. And maybe, just maybe, they would lead her to a place where she truly belonged. As the morning wore on, Emily's mind raced with possibilities. Who were the Johnsons they were visiting? Could they be related to Amelia Johnson, the woman who wrote the letter? And what about the location marked on the map? Emily made a decision. She couldn't wait any longer. Listening carefully to make sure her adoptive parents were still downstairs, she crept back up to the attic. The old chest sat there, seeming to mock her with its secrets. This time, Emily dove deeper. Behind the map and letter, she found old photographs, faded documents, and at the very bottom, a small, ornate key. It was unlike anything she'd seen before, its intricate design suggesting it opened something of great importance. Just then, she heard footsteps on the stairs. Panicking, Emily grabbed the key and a handful of photos, shoving them into her pocket before rushing back to her room. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Emily's mind was elsewhere as Karen fussed over her appearance, trying to tame her curls into submission for their visit to the Johnsons. As they drove through the leafy suburbs of Boston, Emily's heart pounded. She clutched the key in her pocket, its edges digging into her palm, a reminder of the mysteries yet to be solved. They pulled up to a modest two-story house, nothing like the Campbells' mansion. As they walked up the path, the front door opened, revealing an elderly couple. The woman's eyes widened as they fell on Emily, a flicker of something passing over her face. "Welcome," the woman said, her voice wavering slightly. "I'm Martha Johnson, and this is my husband, Harold. Please, come in." As Emily crossed the threshold, she felt a strange sensation, as if she were stepping not just into a house, but into the past itself. Little did she know, the answers she sought were closer than she could have ever imagined, and the revelations to come would shake the foundations of everything she thought she knew about herself and her family. The Johnsons' living room was cluttered but cozy, filled with mismatched furniture and walls lined with photographs. As the adults exchanged pleasantries, Emily's eyes were drawn to a particular picture on the mantelpiece. It showed a younger Martha Johnson, her arm around a woman who looked startlingly familiar. With a jolt, Emily realized why. It was the same woman from the photograph she'd found in the attic, Amelia Johnson. Her gasp must have been audible because suddenly, all eyes were on her. Martha Johnson's gaze was particularly intense, a mix of curiosity and something that looked almost like hope. "Emily, dear," Martha said softly, "why don't you come help me in the kitchen? I've made some lemonade." As Emily followed Martha, she could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. In the kitchen, Martha busied herself with glasses and a pitcher, her hands shaking slightly. "You look so much like her," Martha murmured, almost to herself. "Like who?" Emily asked, her heart racing. Martha turned, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Like your mother, dear. Like Amelia." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Emily gripped the counter for support, her mind reeling. In that moment, she knew that the path to uncovering the truth had just begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The revelation hit Emily like a tidal wave, leaving her breathless and disoriented. She stared at Martha, searching for any sign of deception, but found only sincerity and a deep, aching sadness in the older woman's eyes. My mother?" Emily stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "But how?" "The Campbells said." Martha's weathered hand reached out, gently squeezing Emily's shoulder. "Oh, child, there's so much you don't know, so much that's been hidden from you. But now's not the time. They'll get suspicious if we're gone too long." As if on cue, Karen's voice floated in from the living room, tight with forced cheerfulness. "Everything all right in there? Need any help?" Martha quickly pressed a folded piece of paper into Emily's hand. "The abandoned house on Maple Street. Go there when you can. Be careful and trust no one." Emily nodded, slipping the paper into her pocket alongside the key she'd taken from the attic. Her mind was reeling, but she forced herself to take a deep breath and plaster on a smile as she carried the tray of lemonade back to the living room. The rest of the visit passed in a blur. Emily barely registered the stilted conversation, her thoughts consumed by Martha's words and the weight of the secrets she now carried. As they said their goodbyes, Martha hugged her tightly, whispering, "Be brave, little one. The truth will set you free." That night, after a tense and mostly silent dinner, Emily waited until the house was quiet before sneaking out of her room. With trembling hands, she unfolded the map she'd found in the attic, comparing it to the address Martha had given her. Her heart raced as she realized they matched perfectly. Decision made, Emily changed into dark clothes and quietly made her way downstairs. She hesitated at the door, the magnitude of what she was about to do finally hitting her. But the pull of the truth was too strong to resist. The streets were eerily quiet as Emily pedaled her bike through the sleeping neighborhood. The abandoned house on Maple Street loomed before her, its weathered facade a stark contrast to the well-maintained homes surrounding it. Emily's hands shook as she used the ornate key from the attic to unlock the front door. The interior was dusty and filled with shadows, but Emily pressed on, guided by an inexplicable sense of purpose. In what must have once been the living room, she found a loose floorboard. Her breath caught as she pried it up, revealing a hidden compartment containing a leather-bound journal. Emily opened it with trembling fingers, her heart pounding as she recognized the handwriting from the unfinished letter. It was her mother's diary. As she began to read, the world around her faded away. The journal told a story of forbidden love, betrayal, and heart-wrenching sacrifice. Amelia Johnson, a housekeeper for the wealthy Campbell family, had fallen in love with Richard Campbell. Their affair had resulted in Emily's birth, but the Campbells, desperate to avoid scandal, had orchestrated an elaborate cover-up. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she read her mother's anguished words. "My dearest Emily, I hope that someday you'll understand why I had to let you go. The Campbells threatened to destroy everything and everyone I love if I didn't give you up. But know this, my sweet girl, you are loved, you are wanted, and someday, somehow, I'll find a way back to you." The sound of a floorboard creaking snapped Emily back to reality. She wasn't alone in the house. Panic rising in her throat, Emily shoved the diary into her backpack and scrambled to her feet. A beam of light cut through the darkness, a flashlight. Someone was coming. "Who's there?" a gruff voice called out. Emily's mind raced. She couldn't be caught here, not now. Not when she was so close to uncovering the truth. With her heart pounding, she made a split-second decision and darted towards the back of the house. She could hear heavy footsteps behind her as she burst through the back door and ran towards her bike. The voice called out again, closer this time, but Emily didn't look back. She pedaled harder than she ever had in her life, the wind whipping tears from her eyes. It wasn't until she was several blocks away that Emily dared to slow down. Her lungs burned, and her legs felt like jelly, but she'd made it. She'd escaped with her mother's diary, and with it, the key to unlocking the secrets of her past. As she snuck back into the Campbell mansion, Emily's mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Anger at the lies she'd been told, grief for the mother she'd never known, and underneath it all, a burning determination to uncover the whole truth, no matter the cost. Back in her room, Emily hid the diary with the map and letter. As she crawled into bed, exhausted but wide awake, she made a silent vow. She would find out what really happened to her mother. She would uncover the Campbell's secrets. And somehow, someway, she would find a place where she truly belonged. Little did Emily know, her late-night adventure hadn't gone unnoticed. In a darkened study across town, a phone rang. "She was there," a voice said without preamble. "She found the diary." There was a long pause before a cold, familiar voice replied. "Then we have no choice. It's time to move to Plan B. The girl knows too much." As the first light of dawn broke over Boston, Emily finally drifted off to sleep, unaware that her quest for truth had set in motion events that would change her life forever. The game was afoot, and the stakes were higher than she could possibly imagine. The next morning, Emily woke with a start, her heart racing as the events of the previous night came flooding back. The weight of her mother's diary pressed against her through the mattress, a tangible reminder that her world had been irreversibly altered. As she made her way downstairs for breakfast, Emily could sense a shift in the atmosphere of the Campbell mansion. Richard and Karen sat at the dining table, their faces tight with barely concealed tension. The air felt thick with unspoken words. "Good morning, Emily," Karen said, her voice overly cheery. "Did you sleep well?" Emily nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As she poured herself a bowl of cereal, she could feel Richard's eyes boring into her. "Emily," he began, his tone carefully measured, "your mother and I have been thinking. Perhaps it would be best if you spent the summer with your cousins after all. In fact, we've arranged for you to leave tomorrow." The spoon clattered from Emily's hand, splashing milk across the polished table. "Tomorrow? But why so soon?" Karen reached across the table, her manicured hand closing over Emily's. "We just think it would be good for you, sweetheart. A change of scenery, some time with family." Emily's mind raced. They knew. Somehow, they must have found out about her nighttime excursion. This was their way of separating her from the truth she was so close to uncovering. I don't want to go," Emily said, her voice stronger than she felt. "This is my home. I want to stay here." Richard's jaw tightened. "This isn't up for discussion, Emily. The arrangements have been made." As Emily opened her mouth to protest further, the doorbell rang. Karen jumped up, relief evident on her face. "That must be Jessica." "Emily, why don't you go upstairs and start packing?" Recognizing defeat, at least for the moment, Emily trudged up to her room. Her mind whirled with possibilities. She couldn't leave now, not when she was so close to unraveling the mystery of her past. But how could she stay? As she half-heartedly began to pull clothes from her closet, a soft knock at her door made her jump. It was Jessica, the Campbells' longtime housekeeper. "Miss Emily? May I come in?" Emily nodded, grateful for the friendly face. Jessica had always been kind to her, a steady presence in the often turbulent Campbell household. As Jessica entered the room, closing the door behind her, her usually cheerful expression was replaced with one of worry. "Miss Emily, I couldn't help but overhear. Are they really sending you away?" Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't want to go, Jessica. I can't. Not now." Jessica glanced nervously at the door before lowering her voice. "Listen to me carefully, Miss Emily. I've worked for the Campbells for a long time and I've seen things, heard things. I think you might be in danger." Emily's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I can't explain everything now, but you need to be careful. Whatever you do, don't get in that car tomorrow. I have a friend who can help you. Meet me in the garden at midnight. And Emily, don't trust anyone, not even me. Question everything." With that cryptic warning, Jessica hurried from the room, leaving Emily more confused and frightened than ever. The rest of the day passed in a haze of forced smiles and stilted conversations. Emily packed her bags as instructed, all the while planning her midnight rendezvous with Jessica. As night fell, she carefully hid her mother's diary, the map, and the mysterious key in a secret compartment of her backpack. At 5 minutes to midnight, Emily crept down the back stairs and out into the moonlit garden. Her heart pounded as she waited, jumping at every rustle of leaves and distant car engine. "Miss Emily?" She whirled around to see Jessica emerging from the shadows, accompanied by a tall, broad-shouldered man Emily had never seen before. "This is my brother, Michael," Jessica explained hurriedly. "He's going to take you somewhere safe. You need to go now before—" A sudden flood of light cut Jessica off mid-sentence. Emily squinted against the glare, her blood running cold as she heard Richard Campbell's voice, hard with anger. "What the hell is going on here?" As Emily's eyes adjusted, she saw Richard and Karen standing on the back porch, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. The scene before her seemed to move in slow motion, Jessica pushing her towards Michael, Richard's face contorting with rage, Karen's anguished cry, and then chaos erupted. Michael scooped Emily up and ran, dodging past the men in suits who lunged for them. Emily caught a glimpse of Jessica grappling with one of the men, buying them precious seconds. They raced through the garden, vaulting over the low stone wall that separated the Campbell estate from the neighboring property. Emily could hear shouts and the pounding of feet behind them, but Michael didn't slow down. They zigzagged through backyards and alleyways, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, they reached a nondescript sedan parked on a quiet side street. "Get in," Michael commanded, his voice low and urgent. As they sped away into the night, Emily's mind reeled. Who were those men? Why were the Campbells so desperate to send her away? And where was Michael taking her? One thing was certain, there was no going back now. Emily clutched her backpack to her chest, feeling the reassuring bulk of her mother's diary inside. Whatever lay ahead, she knew that the truth she sought was worth any risk. As the lights of Boston faded behind them, Emily stared out into the darkness, her heart racing with fear and exhilaration. Her journey into the unknown had only just begun. The sedan sped through the night, streetlights flashing by in a hypnotic rhythm. Emily sat in the passenger seat, her mind still reeling from the night's events. Michael, Jessica's brother, drove in tense silence, his eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror. "Where are we going?" Emily finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Somewhere safe, a place where we can figure out our next move." As the city gave way to suburbs and then to rolling countryside, Emily's exhaustion began to catch up with her. She drifted in and out of sleep, her dreams filled with fragmented images: her mother's face, the Campbells' angry shouts, Jessica's worried eyes. She awoke with a start as the car came to a stop. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. They were parked in front of a small, weathered cabin nestled in a clearing of pine trees. "We're here," Michael said, his voice gruff with fatigue. "It's not much, but it's off the grid. We should be safe for now." As they entered the cabin, Emily was struck by its Spartan interior: a small kitchenette, a threadbare couch, and a rickety table with 2 chairs. It was a far cry from the luxurious Campbell mansion, but to Emily, it felt more like a sanctuary than anywhere she'd lived in the past 5 years. Michael busied himself securing the perimeter while Emily sank onto the couch, her mother's diary clutched to her chest. Now that they were safe, at least for the moment, the full weight of everything that had happened crashed over her. "Why?" she choked out, tears streaming down her face. "Why did they lie to me all these years? Why are they trying to keep me away from the truth?" Michael paused in his tasks, his expression softening as he looked at the distraught girl. He sat down beside her, his large frame dwarfing her small one. "Emily," he began, his voice gentle, "there's a lot you don't know about your past, about your real parents. The Campbells. They're involved in something big, something dangerous." Emily wiped her eyes, looking up at Michael with determination. "Tell me everything, please. I need to know the truth." Michael took a deep breath, then began to speak. He told her about Amelia Johnson, her birth mother, who had worked as a housekeeper for the Campbells, about the affair between Amelia and Richard Campbell that had resulted in Emily's birth, and about the elaborate cover-up orchestrated by the Campbells to protect their reputation and hide a much darker secret. "Your mother," Michael explained, his voice heavy with emotion, "she discovered something. Something that could have brought down not just the Campbells, but a whole network of powerful people. They threatened her, forced her to give you up. She went into hiding, but she never stopped trying to find a way back to you." Emily's mind whirled with this new information. "But why now? Why are they so desperate to keep me away?" Michael's expression grew grim. "Because you're getting close to the truth. That map you found, the key. They're pieces of a puzzle your mother left behind. A puzzle that, if solved, could expose everything." As the morning wore on, Emily pored over her mother's diary, the map, and the mysterious key. With Michael's help, she began to piece together the fragments of her past. The diary spoke of a hidden safe deposit box, its contents potentially explosive. The map, they realized, led not to a physical location, but to a series of clues scattered across the city. Just as they were making progress, the burner phone Michael had been carrying chirped to life. His face paled as he listened to the voice on the other end. "We have to move," he said urgently, already gathering their meager belongings. "They've found Jessica. We're not safe here anymore." Emily's heart raced as they rushed back to the car. As they sped down the winding country roads, her mind was a tumult of emotions: fear for Jessica, anger at the Campbells, and a burning determination to uncover the whole truth. They were nearing the outskirts of Boston when disaster struck. A black SUV came out of nowhere, ramming into the side of their sedan. The world spun, metal screamed against metal, and then everything went black. When Emily came to, she was being carried. Through blurry vision, she saw Michael's face, streaked with blood and set in grim determination. Behind them, she could hear shouts and the sound of pursuing footsteps. "Run, Emily," Michael gasped, setting her down. "Find the safe deposit box. It's the key to everything. Go!" Before she could protest, Michael turned to face their pursuers, buying her precious seconds to escape. Tears streaming down her face, Emily ran, clutching her backpack with its precious contents. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs felt like lead. When she finally stopped, gasping for breath in a narrow alley, she realized she was back in the heart of Boston, alone, scared, but more determined than ever to uncover the truth. As night fell over the city, Emily huddled in the shadows, her mother's diary open in her lap. She knew what she had to do. Tomorrow, she would begin following the clues her mother had left behind. She would find the safe deposit box and expose the Campbell's secrets, no matter the cost. For the first time in her young life, Emily felt a sense of purpose. She was no longer just a lost, adopted child. She was Amelia Johnson's daughter, and she would finish what her mother had started. As she drifted off into an uneasy sleep, Emily's last thoughts were of the challenges that lay ahead. The path to the truth would be dangerous, but she was ready to face whatever came her way. The game was no longer just about uncovering her past. It was about securing her future and finding justice for her mother. Little did Emily know, her actions had set in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of power in Boston and beyond. The clock was ticking, and the race for the truth had only just begun. The first light of dawn found Emily huddled in a corner of the Boston Public Library, her mother's diary spread out before her. She had slipped in as soon as the doors opened, grateful for a warm, safe place to continue her investigation. As she pored over the cryptic notes and half-finished thoughts in the diary, Emily's mind raced. The safe deposit box her mother had mentioned seemed to be the key to everything, but finding it wouldn't be easy. The clues were scattered across the city, hidden in plain sight. Just as she was deciphering what seemed to be a promising lead, a hand touched her shoulder. Emily jumped, her heart pounding, only to find herself face to face with an elderly librarian. "Are you all right, dear?" the woman asked, concern etched on her face. "You look like you've been here all night." Emily forced a smile. "I'm fine, thank you. Just doing some research for a school project." The librarian nodded, though her eyes remained skeptical. As she walked away, Emily knew she couldn't stay much longer. She was too exposed here, too visible. Gathering her things, Emily set out into the bustling streets of Boston. Her first stop was the old courthouse, where one of her mother's clues seemed to point. As she climbed the worn stone steps, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Inside, she found what she was looking for, an old painting of the city's founding fathers. Hidden in the corner, barely visible, was a small symbol that matched one in her mother's diary. Emily quickly sketched it, her hands shaking with excitement and fear. As she exited the courthouse, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Emily's blood ran cold as she recognized Karen Campbell in the back seat. Her eyes locked on Emily. Without thinking, Emily ran. She darted through crowded streets, her heart pounding in her ears. She could hear shouts behind her, the sound of pursuing footsteps growing closer. Just when she thought she couldn't run anymore, a hand grabbed her arm and pulled her into a narrow alley. Emily was about to scream when she recognized the face. It was Jessica, looking haggard but very much alive. "Quickly," Jessica whispered, leading Emily through a maze of back alleys. "We don't have much time." They ended up in a small, dingy apartment. As Emily caught her breath, Jessica explained how she had escaped from the Campbell's men and had been searching for Emily ever since. "But why?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "Why are you risking so much to help me?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Because I knew your mother, Emily. She was my best friend, and I promised her I'd look out for you. I've been waiting years for the right moment to help you uncover the truth." As night fell, Emily and Jessica pored over the clues they had gathered. The safe deposit box was in a bank downtown, but accessing it wouldn't be easy. They would need the key, the very key Emily had found in the attic of the Campbell mansion. "We have to go back," Emily said, her voice filled with determination. "It's the only way." Jessica looked at her with a mix of pride and fear. "It's dangerous, Emily. The Campbells will be expecting us." "I know," Emily replied, her jaw set. "But I have to do this. For my mother. For the truth." As they planned their infiltration of the Campbell mansion, Emily felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at the lies she'd been told, fear of what lay ahead, and a burning desire for justice? Or was it vengeance? The next evening, under the cover of darkness, Emily and Jessica approached the familiar gates of the Campbell estate. Emily's heart raced as they slipped past the security systems, using Jessica's inside knowledge to navigate the grounds. They were almost to the attic when a voice stopped them cold. "I've been expecting you." Richard Campbell stepped out of the shadows, his face a mask of cold fury. Behind him stood Karen, her eyes red-rimmed and conflicted. "It's time for the truth, Emily," Richard said, his voice eerily calm. "All of it." As Emily stood there, facing the people who had raised her, lied to her, and now hunted her, she realized that this moment would define not just her past, but her future. The choices she made now would determine the course of her life. With a deep breath, Emily stepped forward, ready to confront the shadows of her past and fight for the truth she so desperately sought. Whatever the cost, she would see this through to the end. The final confrontation was about to begin, and the fate of not just Emily, but of a web of lies and corruption spanning decades, hung in the balance. The truth was within reach, but the price of uncovering it might be higher than anyone could have imagined. The tension in the attic was palpable as Emily faced Richard and Karen Campbell. Her heart raced, but she stood her ground, Jessica by her side. "The truth." Emily's voice trembled but grew stronger with each word. "You mean the truth about how you've lied to me my entire life? About my real mother? About why you really adopted me?" Richard's face hardened. "You don't understand the complexities of the situation, Emily. We did what we had to do to protect you, and ourselves." Karen stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "Please, Emily, Let us explain. It's not as simple as you think. As the Campbells began to unravel their tale, Emily listened with growing horror and disbelief. They spoke of a vast conspiracy involving some of Boston's most powerful families, of money laundering and corporate espionage. Amelia Johnson, Emily's birth mother, had stumbled upon evidence that could have brought down this entire network. Your mother threatened to expose everything, Richard explained, his voice tight. We had no choice but to neutralize the threat. Emily's blood ran cold. What did you do to her? She demanded. The silence that followed was deafening. It was Karen who finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. We didn't kill her, Emily, but we made sure she disappeared. It was for the greater good. Rage boiled inside Emily. The greater good? You destroyed my life, my mother's life, for money and power. As the confrontation escalated, Jessica suddenly gasped. Emily, the key. We need to get the key. In the chaos that followed, Emily lunged for the hiding spot where she had stashed the ornate key. Richard tried to intercept her, but Jessica blocked his path. Karen stood frozen, torn between her husband and the girl she had raised as her daughter. Emily's fingers closed around the key just as a new voice cut through the commotion. That's quite enough. Everyone turned to see a tall, distinguished man standing in the doorway. Emily recognized him immediately from photos. It was Senator Williams, one of the most powerful politicians in Massachusetts. Uncle James? Karen breathed, relief and fear mingling in her voice. The senator's cold eyes surveyed the scene. I see the situation has escalated. Perhaps it's time we all had a frank discussion about what's really at stake here. As Senator Williams began to speak, laying out the true scope of the conspiracy and the potential consequences of exposure, Emily felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. The truth was far more complex and far-reaching than she had ever imagined. But even as the senator talked about national security and the greater good, Emily's mind was racing. The key in her hand, the safe deposit box, her mother's final message. She knew that the real truth, the evidence that could change everything, was still out there. In a split-second decision, Emily made her move. With a swift motion, she threw open the attic window and leaped onto the adjacent tree branch, just as she had done countless times as a child. Emily, no! Karen's anguished cry followed her as she scrambled down the tree. Heart pounding, Emily ran into the night, the key clutched tightly in her hand. Behind her, she could hear shouts and the sound of pursuit, but she didn't look back. She had one goal now: to find the safe deposit box and uncover the final piece of the puzzle her mother had left behind. As she ran through the darkened streets of Boston, Emily's mind whirled with questions. Who could she trust? What would she find in the safe deposit box? And most importantly, was her mother still alive out there somewhere? The night air was cool against her face as she pushed herself harder, driven by a mix of fear, determination, and the burning need for truth. Emily knew that whatever lay ahead, there was no turning back now. The final chapter of this mystery was about to unfold, and she was ready to face it head-on. Little did Emily know, as she raced towards the downtown bank where the safe deposit box waited, that her actions had set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of power in Boston and beyond. The truth she sought was more explosive than she could have ever imagined, and the cost of uncovering it might be higher than she was prepared to pay. As the first light of dawn began to break over the city, Emily steeled herself for what lay ahead. Whatever she found in that safe deposit box, she knew it would change her life, and possibly the lives of many others, forever. The final confrontation was at hand, and Emily was determined to see it through, no matter the consequences. The first rays of sunlight were just beginning to paint the Boston skyline as Emily arrived at the downtown bank. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of exhaustion and adrenaline coursing through her veins. She clutched the ornate key tightly, its edges digging into her palm. The bank wouldn't open for another hour, but Emily couldn't afford to wait. She needed to find a way in now, before the Campbells or Senator Williams caught up with her. As she circled the building, searching for a possible entry point, a familiar voice called out to her. Emily! Wait! She whirled around to see Jessica running towards her, out of breath and disheveled. How did you find me? Emily asked, torn between relief and suspicion. Jessica smiled weakly. I've known you since you were a baby, Emily. I had a feeling this is where you'd go. Together, they managed to find a service entrance left ajar by an early morning cleaner. Slipping inside, they navigated the quiet hallways until they reached the vault area. Emily's hands shook as she inserted the key into the lock of safe deposit box 1985, the year of her birth. Inside, they found a USB drive, a stack of documents, and a letter addressed to Emily in her mother's handwriting. With trembling fingers, Emily unfolded the letter and began to read aloud. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered the truth about your past. I'm so sorry for all the pain and confusion you must have endured. Know that everything I did to protect you. The evidence on this drive and in these documents exposes a web of corruption that goes far beyond the Campbells. It implicates politicians, judges, and business leaders in a conspiracy that has shaped our city for decades. But more importantly, it proves your true heritage. Emily, you are not just my daughter. You are the rightful heir to the Campbell fortune. Richard is your biological father, but the Campbells' crimes go back generations. They built their empire on theft and deceit, stealing from those they deemed beneath them. I couldn't stand by and watch as they continued to hurt people. When I threatened to expose them, they took you from me. But I never stopped fighting to find a way back to you. The choice of what to do with this information is yours now. But remember, true justice isn't about revenge. It's about making things right. I love you more than you could ever know. Be brave, be kind, and know that no matter what, I am proud of you. All my love, Mom. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she finished reading. Jessica pulled her into a tight hug, her own eyes glistening with emotion. Their moment of quiet reflection was shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps. Emily quickly gathered the contents of the safe deposit box, shoving them into her backpack. As they turned to leave, they found themselves face to face with Richard and Karen Campbell, flanked by Senator Williams and two stern-looking men in suits. It's over, Emily, Richard said, his voice heavy with resignation. Give us the documents, and we can all walk away from this. Emily stood tall, her chin raised defiantly. No, I won't let you bury the truth any longer. What followed was a tense standoff, with both sides presenting their cases. The Campbells and Senator Williams spoke of national security, of the chaos that would ensue if the truth came to light. Emily countered with the lives that had been destroyed, the injustices perpetrated in the name of power and greed. As the argument reached its peak, a new voice cut through the tension. That's enough. Everyone turned to see a woman standing in the doorway. She was older, her hair streaked with gray, but Emily would have recognized her anywhere. Mom, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Amelia Johnson stepped forward, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. I'm so sorry, Emily. I never wanted to leave you, but I had to find a way to make things right. The room erupted into chaos as everyone began talking at once. But Emily tuned it all out, focusing only on the mother she had thought lost forever. In the hours that followed, the truth finally came to light. With Amelia's testimony and the evidence Emily had uncovered, the full extent of the conspiracy was revealed. The aftermath would shake Boston to its core, but Emily knew it was necessary for true healing to begin. As the dust settled, Emily found herself facing a choice. She could use the evidence to destroy the Campbells and everyone involved in the conspiracy, or she could find a way to bring about justice while also offering a path to redemption. In the end, Emily chose compassion. She worked with prosecutors to ensure that those responsible faced consequences for their actions, but she also advocated for programs to help the victims and reform the systems that had allowed such corruption to flourish. Richard and Karen Campbell, facing the weight of their crimes, made the decision to turn themselves in. Before they were led away, Karen approached Emily one last time. We may not be your real parents, she said, her voice thick with emotion, but we do love you, Emily. I hope that someday you can forgive us. Emily looked at the woman who had raised her, seeing her truly for the first time. "I'm not there yet," she said honestly. "But maybe someday." As she watched the Campbells being led away, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The journey ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in her life, she felt truly free. With her mother by her side and the truth finally out in the open, Emily was ready to face whatever the future held. She had uncovered the secrets of her past, but more importantly, she had discovered the strength within herself to forge her own path forward. As the sun set on this chapter of her life, Emily looked out over the Boston skyline, feeling a sense of hope and possibility. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. She was Emily Johnson, daughter of Amelia, and she was ready to write her own story. Thank you for listening until the end. Share your opinion about the story in the comments and let us know which character you liked the most. If this story touched you and you want to hear more, click on the next story appearing on your screen. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a great community of people who share emotional stories together. Until the next story.